Hi, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to the afternoon session. It's my pleasure to introduce Jennifer Hubley. Jennifer has over 15 years of experience in program creation management, project management, process improvement, and IT service management. She is a leader, facilitator, and program manager who helps team build, design, and implement programs that deliver value and results. She is a program manager and data literacy co-chair, part of integration and analytics coordination in the Office of Data Analytics and Performance at Health and Human Services Commission, Texas. She has an MBA, PMP certification, and a Six Sigma Black Belt. Please welcome Jennifer Hubley.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Hello and good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining me today. I know this after lunch session can be tough, but we'll have an interactive component later to keep us all awake. I also know there are quite a few awesome sessions happening right now, so thank you so much for spending your time with me. I'm Jen Hubley, and in this session, we're going to talk about key performance indicators, or KPIs, and the 3 steps to measure what matters to drive results and deliver value. Let's dive right in. Why KPIs? Because they help you reach goals. However, KPIs seem to suffer from a bit of a marketing and PR problem. Like SharePoint, am I right? Great tool, not a great connotation when you hear that name. KPIs are undervalued, they're underused, and quite often when they are used, they're used improperly. But when used properly, KPIs drive growth. They help you identify and target behaviors, measure progress, and reach goals. A study by Forbes found that people who vividly describe their goals in written form are 1 to 2 to 1.4 more times likely to be successful than those who don't. So why wouldn't we use KPIs to drive our goals? Now, think of your own experience. Have you worked for a company that doesn't have KPIs for their project, program, or initiative? I'm sure you have. Where you may work on a task just to change that task at the last minute, or you experience continual churn. You're given work, but you aren't producing anything of value. Or what if you do have KPIs, but they're not measuring the right things or encouraging the right actions? Let's look at a real-life scenario. Actually, all examples and questions in this session are based on real-life examples from when I helped companies create or refine KPIs. I'm not going to give the names of those companies, but they are real life. So that means by the end of this training, you will have identified real-life KPIs that drive real-life value. So back to the scenario. Here's our problem. Our customers are complaining that starting project work takes too long after they sign their contract. Heard that before. The KPI proposed by leadership to fix this problem is the time from contract signature to project kickoff will be 7 days. All right, fair. Well, we analyzed our data. We found that the project team is actually hitting that target 97% of the time. But there are still customer complaints. So what's the problem? Any ideas? What's the problem? That's a big one. The biggest piece is the KPI isn't motivating the right behavior. It's not motivating a behavior that will reduce customer complaints. Should leadership keep this KPI? No, because it's not going to promote the behavior we want. And we're going to come back to this scenario later and actually come up with a better KPI. Motivating the right behavior means you're measuring what matters. When you spend time working on tasks and processes that don't drive goals, you're not going to produce anything of value. If you don't have the right KPIs, you aren't driving the right behavior. If you aren't driving the right behavior, you aren't moving towards your strategic goals. If you aren't moving towards your goals, there's no value delivery. Very cyclical here. Not to mention the unintended consequences, the negative consequences. no growth, reduced motivation, lack of a sense of accomplishment. Constant rework leads to time, money loss, and frustration, unhappiness, and poor morale. Quite a big impact from such a small 3-letter acronym. It is so important to measure what matters and not just measure. Adaptability is the key to staying ahead, and KPIs give us the real-time data we need to make quick, informed decisions, as well as strategic long-term plans to stay ahead. So, we agree we need to measure. We need to measure what matters. But before we dig into the 3-step approach, let's ensure we're all on the same page with the acronym KPI and level set on that definition. As we noted in our introduction, a KPI is a key performance indicator. A true KPI will track and encourage progress towards critical goals. That is a really important definition. Why? What are some of the words here? Critical. Yeah, right? Our critical goals. We want to achieve our goals. Do we want to measure everything? Definitely not. We want to measure behavior that helps us reach our critical strategic goals. Like a target, KPIs help guide us where to aim. Using KPIs to guide what to measure means we don't spend time on tasks that don't drive goals. Using KPIs means we won't spend time measuring things that don't matter, things that don't tell us anything valuable, that don't give us insight to the organization, or are we even reaching our goal? Where's our progress? Have you ever had feedback before that didn't quite guide you on what specifically you need to change? Advice such as hit those marks or do better. Helpful, right? Well, that's just a starting point. Failure to reach goals is essentially caused by a lack of specifics. Individuals and businesses fail at reaching their goals when the direction is vague and general and without measurable specifics. Here's where KPIs come in. They enable those measurable specifics. And they do this by quantifying the extent of the problem, establishing a baseline for root cause analysis, and measuring the effectiveness of solutions. True KPIs will also allow us to set benchmarks for our goals. Benchmarks or baselines enable us to set a standard and measure the outcomes of the behaviors we're targeting. Once we have the baseline or standard, we have something to measure against. Once we measure against our baseline, we can find where we're doing well or where we need to improve. If everyone's at 100%, how do we find the very best? How do we improve? You see it a lot with vanity metrics. KPIs let us identify where the best performance is happening and monitor to adjust to meet our goals. We can set standards that enable us to share best practices and create action plans, which we'll talk about later. Having the right number of KPIs is a really important aspect of using KPIs to drive results. Let's talk a minute about the number of KPIs that should be created and tracked to measure the effectiveness of solutions. When creating a KPI set, ensure you are tracking the top or critical goals that need to be achieved to prevent tracking too many KPIs. When organizations try and capture every number they can, they often create noise and blur the picture they're actually trying to see. I love a way the colleague of mine says it. Get all you can, but don't can all you get. Trying to implement too many KPIs means people can't see clearly where to improve, so they may become discouraged or disengaged. Or they may be spending too much time being spread too thin, trying to improve too many areas at once. The needle never moves on any of them. A set of 5 to 7 KPIs that track behavior-based outcomes is going to be much more successful than dozens of measures that don't drive behavior. With KPIs, quality is more important than quantity, and too many KPIs are just as bad as tracking one KPI that doesn't align with a strategic goal. Why? Because no single KPI standing alone explains how a situation happened or how to improve that situation. Use KPIs to tell a story about the goal, about how we're going to reach it. Remember, the most important part in KPI is indicator, I. It should indicate or tell us something important. If we don't measure something of value that drives behavior, it's not an indicator. Think about data versus information, right? If it's not telling us something that's important or that we need to know, it's not really information. If this indicator isn't indicating behavior or guiding our path, it's just another metric. So now that we're level set on the definition of KPIs, why they're important, let's actually talk about those 3 steps. So we talked about behavior already a few times. And really that's the key to KPIs is behavior. Use behavior-driven KPI selection to implement KPIs and reach goals. We'll take the following 3 steps to use behavior-driven KPI selection. First, excuse me, identify strategic goals. Second, think smart. And third, target behaviors. KPIs should target behaviors that drive outcomes and are aligned with strategic goals. That means KPIs should enable decision makers to clearly understand what is working well or where adjustments need to be made, facilitating informed and effective data-driven decision making. Asking questions to target behavior will make sure you're really measuring what matters. If we don't question, we don't seek out the information we need to target the right behaviors or to drive value or any change. It's only human nature to want to know when we're doing good enough so we can rest. However, there are always more opportunities or changes to our environments that can impact our ability to reach our goals. And that's why we use KPIs. KPIs help us reach those goals and continue to improve once the original goals are reached or when changes are introduced into our environment. Let's dive deeper into each of the 3 steps and discuss approaches to successfully implement each step. Okay, step 1, identify strategic goals. We said earlier, KPIs serve as a target, aligning individual or organizational efforts with overarching goals. That means management should be using KPIs to make decisions. So this brings us to our first of the 3 steps, identify strategic goals. For KPIs to be effective, we need to build the right KPIs. And effective KPIs start with goal alignment. You must first identify the strategic goals of the project, initiative, or organization and clearly outline the value delivered by achieving those goals. Identifying strategic goals means talking to different stakeholders, researching existing historical content, or maybe creating new data processes and data packages needed to create and measure KPIs. When identifying your goals, strengthen your relationships with your stakeholders. This is so important. Relationship building is a vital skill. They are going to be influencing your KPIs. All right, here's a really good one. An alarming statistic is that 95% of a company's employees are unaware of or do not understand its strategy. 95%. That is a huge percentage. And these are the people managing the projects that are driving the success of that strategy. Can you see why so many times we're not in alignment with our leadership and reaching those strategic goals? If we don't even understand our goals, like 95% of us, we're not going to be able to set or measure or track progress towards anything until we know what it is we're tracking progress towards. If you don't understand your priorities, you cannot create an effective goal or an effective measure for that goal. A helpful approach to identifying strategic goals is start with desired outputs. Ask yourself, what's the desired outcome of this initiative, project, or goal? What are you and your team trying to achieve? This will ground you in the results and help you identify actions and behaviors needed to reach those results, as well as KPIs to track that progress. So let's talk about step number 2, a commonly used approach for goal setting, SMART. So step 2, think SMART. Thinking SMART will help us distill our strategic goals into specific goals and identify the behavior we need to drive success. So I'm sure a lot of you know what SMART means. It's a pretty well-known acronym for project managers, and it's used for goal setting. But if you haven't heard it before, or as a refresher, SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. And I think it's well-reasoned, it's known for a reason. It works. It works great. SMART goals can help you set specific goals and help you identify target behaviors. Once you have that clearly defined goal, you can determine what behavior you want to drive and then what indicators you want to measure to track the progress. Thinking SMART makes sure your KPI can be clearly defined and maintained to track the progress of the goal. And we'll just talk briefly about each component. So the first piece is specific. In 90% of studies, challenging and specific goals resulted in better performance than easy goals, no goals, or do your best goals. Why? Because those quantifiers make sure the goal is not vague, it's able to be calculated, and it's able to be achieved. Specific goals help clarify the scope of the goal, or more importantly, my PMs, what is out of scope. Next is measurable. Measurable goals provide valuable insights into the effectiveness or the strategies of the actions you're taking. Being able to measure enables you to set benchmarks and determine how you're performing and track progress towards your goal. Measurable KPIs let you know if you are targeting the right behavior. If you find after measuring the goal isn't being reached, you can investigate as to why to remove roadblocks, or maybe reevaluate your goals and your KPI. That's the beauty of measurement. Next, attainable. Attainable really just means achievable. And it has to be achievable by your specific team. That means you must have the right resources, environment, other operational processes, or equipment needed to reach the goal. When goals are attainable, there's a much higher probability of achieving them. Having attainable goals also means your goals need to be realistic and time-bound, which are the last 2 components of SMART. Realistic means KPI should be relevant to the strategic goals. That's why it's so important that our first step is to identify them. Realistic goals are goals that are aligned with strategic objectives of the organization. And when those goals are realistic and within the context of broader organizational aims, it ensures you're producing value. Lastly, time-bound. Time-bound means having a clear deadline to achieve the goal. Having a clear deadline motivates individuals or teams to work toward achieving the goals within that time frame. Think about it. If there's no end date, there's no motivation to complete that task with any urgency. There's also no accountability. Having time-bound goals really helps ensure accountability. The accountability associated with meeting deadlines encourages greater focus and commitment, which ultimately impacts productivity and performance for the better. SMART goals coupled with KPI measurement enables the clear evaluation of success or failure based on your goal. Working SMART will help everyone understand the goal, the baseline, and the target to drive KPIs to reach those goals. All right, before getting to step number 3, let's go back to our scenario from earlier. Remember, The problem is customers are complaining that starting project work is taking too long. Our lovely KPI from leadership was the time from contract signature to kickoff will be 7 days. Well, we then found the team was hitting that KPI and the complaints didn't stop. So here's where we left off last time. What should we measure instead? Well, we'll need to do a little investigation or root cause analysis to determine the behavior to target and the KPI to measure. So we do that. We find that the financial tasks needed to actually start the work after the kickoff won't even be ready in that 7-day time frame, and it takes at least 10 days or longer. So that's why progress is halting immediately after kickoff and driving the complaints. So what KPIs should we suggest instead? We want it to relate to those financial tasks, right? If that's our bottleneck, that's going to be our KPI that we're going to measure to improve that performance. Our KPI can target the number of days we want to achieve. So we can suggest that financial task completion must occur 10 days after contract signature. We can set our baseline, we can measure progress. The most important thing is we can inform the client accurately how long it will take to begin work, to set expectations and reduce those complaints. This new KPI drives the behavior of having all the necessary tasks ready for kickoff. So immediately after kickoff, work begins instead of halting, right? So that ensures a positive customer experience. The new KPI avoids motivating a quick kickoff followed by an immediate project halt and that terrible complaint. All right, motivating that hurry up and wait behavior. Let's talk about targeting behaviors and then we'll do a few examples together. So we've completed step 1, identify your strategic goals. Step 2, think smart. Now we're on step 3, target behaviors that drive outcomes. The biggest key here is identifying the desired behavior needed to reach the goal. And so many times we make KPIs that do not motivate our goals and do not drive the right behavior. We need to think about what teams, departments, or processes are involved in reaching the goal. What inputs and outputs are needed. And then what behaviors drive those inputs? What stakeholders and actions are needed? We want to make sure we can drive the progress by identifying the behaviors needed to bring influence. So targeting behavior can be straightforward, or it can require more analysis to determine the motivating behavior. So let's do a few examples together. And we'll want you to take out your phone in a minute and we'll have a poll. But first, I'm going to show you the set of KPIs that we're going to do the example based on. So here's a set of KPIs for a new product team looking to become profitable in 2 years. So this KPI set can help measure the overall health of the new product team from different aspects. Our first one, increase new revenue generated by the sales team by 10%. The second, reduce customer return complaints submitted to the customer support team by 25%. Third, determine marketing generated sales lead impact on revenue in 3 months. The fourth, double employee engagement in 6 months. And lastly, we want to improve the efficiency of the current product delivery team by 3%. All right, so using these goals, we're going to do an exercise. We're going to pick 3 of the 5. If you've got a cell phone or a laptop, you can pull it out now. Sorry, I was going to say, if it fails low tech, we'll do a low tech way in the room, but I think technology's doing good today. So go to tinyurl.com/take KPI poll. There'll be 3 questions. You can do them all at once. And then we'll come back together and talk about them together. And while we do that, oh yeah, it is, I'll read it, tinyurl.com/take KPI poll. Here you go. And that music is just our 2.5-minute timer. instead of dead air. And you'll see 3 questions. All right, looking around the room, everyone have a chance to enter their answers? All right, let's dig right in. So our first KPI, increase new revenue generated by the sales team by 10%. Identify the target behavior. All right, we got a nice mix in the room. Here are the results. Let's just do a quick refresh. All right, so I like it. Sales incentives for proactive lead generation. Fairly straightforward, right? Yeah, sometimes targeting behaviors is pretty easy. Sometimes it's not. We'll move on to other examples. I do see some people chose sales incentives for reactive lead generation, which is reactive lead generation is great, and referrals are a really important part of business. But when we're talking about this team and this specific KPI, if we're looking to motivate proactive generation, we want to motivate that behavior, going to a customer, calling a customer, having an in-person visit, right? Referrals and passive income have their time and place, but if we're looking to really increase revenue and target the sales team, we do want to target proactive lead generation. All right, on to the next one. So this one is reduce customer return complaints submitted to the customer support team by 25%. All right, we have a nice spread here too. I like this. That C is the correct answer. Reduce defects causing the returns. So if you look quickly, you might think that this metric might actually be reduce customer on hold time, right? Or improve first touch resolution. But neither of those are actually going to prevent any defects from occurring, right? Those could, right? Because if we look at our target here, we want to reduce complaints, return complaints, right? The customer support can't do anything about that return. It's a defective product. So we need to go to the root of that and motivate what's causing those defective returns. All right, and then lastly, the efficiency of the current product delivery team by 3%. Okay, great. All right, so answer is A, improve on-time delivery. But let's talk a minute about the cycle time, because that one's a good one too. Reducing cycle time, and for those who don't know, is the amount of time it takes to complete one step of a process. Will drive production behaviors, and it may speed up the time it takes to complete part of the production process or create a product, but it doesn't necessarily improve the processes that impact delivery or on-time delivery. When you look at on-time delivery, that's a specific formula for how many deliveries made it on time, in full, versus those that didn't. Or cycle time is just a component potentially of your production piece. All right, great job, everybody. And this was just the low-tech way in case technology failed. So let me scroll right through here. Always have a backup. All right. So we've made it through the 3 steps. You have all just identified and refined real-life KPIs that drive real-life value. Because again, everything in here is based on a real experience I've had. But I do want to take a minute to talk about action plans, because part of behavior-driven KPIs is ensuring we have actionable steps to actually move those KPIs forward. When working with people to drive behavior, you must provide the information that they need to execute the behavior. Someone said communication earlier, and that couldn't be more important, right? We need actionable plans and communications to drive our KPIs forward. This can also be in the form of visualization, and like I said, action plans, dashboards, or scorecards. Visualization helps keep a Kaizen or continuous improvement mindset for everyone, which ensures progress towards the goal is made and enables teams to measure impacts and take corrective actions as change is introduced naturally over time. Wherever your visualizations are, they should be in high traffic areas or places you know they'll be seen. And they must be visible so everyone can engage, not just managers. So, action plans, why are they so important? They bridge the gap between analysis and implementation. They make improvements possible and achievable. Really, they help you get stuff done. People who set actionable tasks and reported progress achieved their goals 40% faster than those who had written goals but did not formulate action commitments. That's pretty powerful. So while we can say writing down goals is important, if we do not report on them, have an accountability partner, we're not going to see as many results. Create an action plan for KPIs by documenting specific actions that need to be taken if your KPIs go out of their thresholds. If a KPI is exceeding a threshold or not performing as expected, actions will need to be taken to either readjust that KPI set or investigate a problem. Regularly review results and adjust strategies, goals, and their corresponding KPIs based on your review. It takes a lot of work to set up KPIs, but none of it will matter if you don't commit to sustaining your KPIs. To ensure sustainment occurs, outline the process, the cadence, and the responsible person for measuring the KPIs and stick with it. By providing a clear view of our initial baselines, ongoing progress, and opportunities, KPIs become powerful tools to drive iterative enhancements. Learning from both successes and setbacks with KPIs enable an adaptive approach and ensure our objectives remain aligned with strategic priorities and evolving circumstances. Bless you. It is important to assess and change the behavior as you target, your environment changes, and your goals are reached. The journey doesn't end with one set of actions. It is a continuous cycle. So, why measure? Why use KPIs? To reach our goals. If we don't measure, we don't set goals. If we don't set goals, we don't seek out the information we need to target the behaviors to drive results or meaningful change. Asking questions and creating KPIs to target behavior will make sure you're measuring what really matters. To begin using KPIs to drive results right away, remember the three-step approach of identify strategic goals, think smart, and target behavior. I hope you will use the three-step approach to measure what truly matters and contribute to improving projects and programs, drive organizational success, and to reach your goals. If there's nothing else you take away from this presentation today, it's to target the behavior that you need to reach the goal you want. All right, thank you so much for joining me. I'd love to connect with you. You can find me LinkedIn, online, or email. I also have business cards, so if you'd like to connect with me, you can grab that down front. And really, thank you so much. I appreciate your time, and thanks again.
Have any questions for Jen?
Hey, quick question. So where do you stand on how much of a stretch your KPI is? Because I know that not necessarily the company I'm in now, but prior companies, they've tended to set goals they knew they could meet, and it wasn't pushing them enough to move the needle.
Yeah, that's a great question. The first part you talked about, so there's like the idea of a vanity metric, right? When you're setting goals that you know you can meet just to show how good you're doing. And then there's the opposite of what you described, like a stretch goal. I love the idea of a stretch goal. I think as long as it's founded in strategy and an actual value-driven outcome, right? Is it, even if you want to set it to like a big hairy goal, right? Like onboard 20,000 people. Well, you're not going to be able to maybe do that, but maybe you know you can do 15,000. I can understand how that could be motivating and want to push people forward, but the stretch has to still be a realistic stretch. Like it still has to be achievable. Otherwise, people are going to lose motivation. They're not going to move to it. So stretching, I think, is good. I think it would be a component of your KPI set, right? You want like your nice 5 to 7. So maybe you've got your nice stretch goal with some of your other more realistic goals. But I love stretch goals. I don't think there's anything wrong with a stretch goal. I don't think it can only be a stretch goal. You'll want to make sure you balance that out, but it can be very motivational if done right.
Got a question here. If there's any difference, is there a difference between KPIs and OKRs?
I think OKRs tend to be more at an organizational higher level. I tend to think of as KPIs as more nitty gritty and using these to, like, these are the people on the front lines when you're working with these teams and you want to see progress immediately. I think OKRs are kind of at more like a 10,000, 20,000 foot view, personally for me. Whereas KPIs tend to allow you to delve a little digger and really kind of have that set of KPIs where you can see how behavior might impact your OKRs, right? Like I kind of think they work together. I think some people might use them interchangeably. But I tend to see OKRs at this higher level view with the KPIs maybe feeding into that.
My turn. I just thought it was kind of interesting, the horizon of a KPI. You've come together, you've come up with a KPI set. And of course, this is all about doing things in a cyclical fashion. So
Yeah.
so your KPIs are going to be refreshed from time to time.
Absolutely.
So then you've got the dilemma.
What's the
of
dilemma?
You can't meet your KPIs because you've changed them.
Oh, well, that for sure has happened, right? I think that's a little bit of truth to power scenario, quite honestly.
Right.
Right? If you want someone to reach a goal, you can't keep moving the goalpost. So I think what happens there is outlining that process and setting a time of, for our business, I think we're going to need to reevaluate these every 6 months. I don't want to say 6 months because for some businesses that might not be enough, right? You kind of like look at your business and set a cadence that you want to evaluate it, that everyone agrees on, right? So we're all measuring the same thing, we're all moving towards the same goal, and hopefully that goalpost isn't being moved on you, right? Because that kind of sounds like what happened. Hey,
Yeah.
we're gonna, yeah. Well, it's fair, you're not gonna reach a goal if you keep moving the goalpost. So I think having a set cadence that's applicable for your business or your industry of when to review those KPIs and when to acknowledge, hey, did we meet our goals or did our goals just change? And that's very much a leadership conversation. And sometimes it's a truth to power conversation of, you got to stop moving. I actually just had that conversation. You got to stop moving my goalpost.
Thanks for all those for the appraisal performances. You know what I'm saying? Coming up.
So nice presentation. So quick question, like while setting up the KPI and then at a frequency measuring them, if we found them, they are not on the track as expected, is there any KPI recovery approach or strategy?
Oh, that's a great question. I think that could be part of your action plan. So when you set your KPIs and you set the thresholds that you expect your KPI to be in, right? Threshold over here, I'm reaching my goal. Threshold over here, I'm not reaching my goal. That's when you would kind of stipulate, what action am I going to take? If I'm reaching my goal, do we continue, right? Do we move the goalpost? Right? Maybe that's happening. Or am I not reaching my goal? What action do I need to take? So I think any type of recovery would be built in your action plan in the beginning when you create your KPI and you determine those thresholds, right? Because you're trying to monitor the progress for your behavior. So you want to know where realistically what you're looking for. So you determine those thresholds and then you have a preset plan. So when inevitably, sometimes it happens, it goes out of the threshold up or down, you'll know what to do, right? Do we move our goalpost? Do we reach our goal? Do we need to investigate? Or why aren't we reaching this? Do we have the right KPI? Is there a bottleneck, right? You might not even have the right KPI and that's okay. You just have to start. Honestly, the most thing I've seen is people not starting. Get a goal, get a KPI and measure it. If you're wrong, get another KPI. You know what I mean? There's no, it's okay. Like that's the beauty of the measurement. But I'd say start with your action plan, assign your thresholds. So then you already know what your reactive recovery or, maybe it's a good thing, right? Maybe you exceeded the threshold because you're doing so well. And now you can move the goalpost to a bigger, better goal or a stretch goal. So I'd say use your action plan and kind of have that upfront.
I think the way that my organization uses the term KPI is actually more in like the idea of like maintenance, like not that we have a baseline and we have a goal to get it better, but like we just want to keep it kind of in this healthy range. Is that
Yeah.
sort of like a misnomer, or is that another way to approach KPIs, or just?
I think that's an indicator because it's telling you the behavior you want to target, right? Like you're basically trying to target within that threshold of performance. So if it is an indicator, right? So if you go out of that threshold, it's telling you, hey, something's wrong here. So I think, yeah, sustainment is a great approach for KPIs.
Okay.
Yeah,
thanks.
absolutely.
If no more questions, thanks, Jen. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
And if you don't mind, as you exit, please use the QR code for the session survey. That'll be really helpful.
Thank
thank
you.